And we have breaking news for you. A federal judge has just issued a partial gag order on former President Donald Trump in his election interference case. She will now restrict the former president from speaking about special counsel Jack Smith, the court, its staff, and potential witnesses. However, he is not restricted from speaking about Washington, D.C. and the jury pool, sharing criticisms of the Biden administration or statements that he believes the case is politically motivated. CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins us now to walk through this fresh ruling. Jessica, just explain this decision by the judge how challenging it must have been to reach, considering what's at stake.
Absolutely. I think you laid it out very clearly. Scott MacFarlane has been reporting from inside the courtroom, and essentially Judge Chutkan did exactly what she said she was going to. She said, I'm going to grant in part and deny in part the prosecution's request for a gag order. And she said, I am going to come up with something that is narrowly tailored. And so what has she done here? Exactly as you said. What she said is, don't disparage or don't use inflammatory and derogatory statements with respect to the special counsel, the court staff, and potential witnesses. When you think about gag orders and the reason behind gag orders, that makes an enormous amount of sense. You're trying to protect the criminal justice system. You're trying to protect the witnesses. You're trying to protect broadly the administration of justice. But then on the other hand, she's acknowledging the First Amendment concern. She's acknowledging that this is not just criminal defendant Trump. This is, in fact, a presidential candidate. And she's not at this point restricting general statements about the Biden administration, about DC in general. She's saying, I think we can still protect the jury pool in other ways. So she really is, I think, looking directly at which statements need to be limited in order to protect this case as it moves forward.
And former President Trump has long said this and all the other cases are witch hunts, and it's an effort to just limit his freedom of speech. So explain how the judge arrived at this partial ruling. I guess what I'm really wondering is how it will be enforced if the president does go as far as to criticize the court staff, which he's already done.
So the reporting indicates that the way this will be enforced is, she says, essentially, I have all the tools necessary to enforce that. So what does this actually mean? Yeah. If there was a violation, then in the first instance, usually what happens is you would face a fine, which is a monetary damage. If there is another violation, then you can talk about more serious sanctions. These are very rare, but you can be thrown in jail for contempt of court, or in this case, in federal prison. Now, I just want to emphasize that is rare, but everything about this case is rare. And so I think you're exactly right to zero in on this question of remedies. It always goes like this. The first remedy is a monetary damage, and then the second remedy, potentially, rarely, is incarceration.
And we know that the former president, at least as far as riling up his base, loves to frame everything as a massive fight between him and the rest of the world. If he were to appeal this decision, is it the type of thing that at any point could make its way up to the Supreme Court or not?
So I don't think so. I think that there are other legal issues facing the former president, issues regarding presidential immunity and executive privilege, and potentially those are more likely to reach the Supreme Court. A couple of things. I think this type of ruling isn't typically appealed. Again, there's no typically here, but I think that the Supreme Court will be very motivated to avoid these questions, to not enter these cases, particularly at their initial stages. And Judge Chutkan has done something that I think is very smart when it comes to whether or not this gag order will be upheld, which I expect that it will be, which is, again, she didn't grant everything the prosecution asked. She really looked at just which statements could most threaten this particular case as it moves forward. And I think that makes it a stronger ruling.
And what do you make of the efforts from the special counsel Jack Smith thus far in this case? As you say, there's nothing typical or usual about it, but does this ruling seem in line with similar cases? Does his request seem in line with similar instances?
Well, as you mentioned, there is no similar instance,
Right.
but I will say I don't think that Judge Chutkan or others was surprised that this motion was brought. Let's remember that the former president in New York is subject to a limited gag order. This motion was brought, as the special counsel indicated, because of derogatory, inflammatory, and other statements that could potentially threaten the witnesses, threaten the court staff, threaten the prosecution, and threaten the case more generally. So, gag orders, while we don't talk about them a lot, they're not supremely rare. I mean, gag orders are imposed in different courts throughout the country. And in this case, when you have a defendant who is making so many aggressive statements about the case, I think it makes all the sense in the world that the prosecution would bring this motion.
All right, Jessica Levinson, great to have you with us on this breaking story. Thanks very much.
Thank you.